Welcome to another edition of Radical Grace Radio.
I'm Pastor Gary Held.
And my name is Matthew Pancake, and we're in for some fun today because, the thing is we're here to talk to people about the gospel. But one of the things that we're doing, and we hope that, we're driving it home. Why? Because I want to drive it home. We show people what it would be like if you knew somebody, maybe even yourself in the future, who took the gospel, went out into the world, and that became the lens through which they look at life. Because there's a lot of people that don't do that. They say they're Christian, and they really use the lens of the law to see the world.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't doubt that they are probably really Christians. It's just that it takes a new way of thinking, and that's mostly accomplished by practice. And if nobody is, why do they have, coaches, for different sports, even doing like batting coaches and other kinds of coaches, because you need to repeat this and you need to do it the right way. And a coach can help you, not do it the wrong way, because then you have to unlearn something. And that's a big deal, because if you've been brought up in a church where what they're really trying to tell you how to do is use the law in a way that it was never intended to function, then you got a lot to not just learn, but to unlearn. So yeah. I do take exception to one thing you said, though. One thing you said, yes, I know. Because you said, we're going to have some fun today. And I think the right response is, we have fun every day.
Well, we're going to have a special kind of fun.
Because
one of the reasons is that my thoughts about doing news, there's still all sorts of podcasts out there that what they do, they talk about news and stuff like that. But, they talk about it kind of like we were talking about just now. They're looking through it kind of a legalese way, like these people did a wrong thing and they should be stopped from doing the wrong thing. And it's easy to fall into that because the majority of news is like that today. But I've been rethinking how, we ought to talk about it in that, using that lens, if I'm a Christian and I believe the gospel and I believe that, the one of the gifts that comes with the gospel is the mind of Christ, then what would Jesus think about some of these things? And would he want to present a different way of look? Of course he would, of course he would. But that's kind of what I've been thinking about with the news roll. And that's the thing that I want to kind of get to sooner than later, because there are a couple of important things to talk about in there, but there's also some fun to be had. So all I got to do now is figure out what I did with the bump music. And here we go. The news roll. And no, I'm not going to edit that out because, we're human here. That's another thing. It's we're perfectionists, right? No, not by a long shot. Okay, so the number 5 story, Reverend Stephen Lee. Hey, we talked about him, right? And I put this in for a reason. An emeritus pastor of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod has surprisingly resumed preaching at Living Word Lutheran Church in Illinois. Okay, so this happened just 14 days after Lee, former President Donald Trump, and 17 others were indicted for charges relating to election interference in Georgia's 2022 presidential election. Lee was the last of the 19 defendants to turn himself in after surrendering at the Fulton County Jail in Georgia. During the service at Living Word Lutheran Church in Illinois, Lee delicately touched upon his arrest and indictment, using veiled references and an emotional reading of the New Testament's letter of Paul to the Ephesians, chapter 6, put on the full armor of God, wherein Paul called believers to stand firm against the dark forces, which is the way he talked in his sermon. You can look it up online if you want. The legal situation for Lee as a pastor is complicated due to allegations that he tried to influence a Georgia election worker as part of a broader conspiracy. While Lee's lawyers argue that his actions were not criminal, a petition organized by the advocacy group Faithful America, signed by almost 20,000 people, calls for Lee's expulsion from his denomination. the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod's Northern Illinois district, they finally figured out who they should talk to, oversees Lee's church and has not commented on whether Lee will continue to serve as a pastor. Meanwhile, the Living Word Lutheran Church congregation is actively searching for a permanent pastor. Surprise, surprise, right? Adding to the evolving narrative surrounding Lee's unexpected return to the pulpit. It's obvious to me that the media does not understand how things work in the Missouri Synod. But we'll talk about that in just a few minutes.
Half the laymen in the Synod don't know how the Synod works.
I mean, right.
Okay, but that may be an exaggeration, but not that much. Okay, so the number 4 story is that rock icon Alice Cooper, and the writer of the iconic song "Only Women Bleed." I know that's true, although I can think of other songs that probably
I put that in there for a reason.
Deserve more top billing, but okay, "Only Women Bleed" has found himself embroiled in controversy after losing a partnership with cosmetics company Vampire Cosmetics. Vampire with a Y. Ask for it by name, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, he lost the partnership due to his desire to, what he says is, not feed the Frankenstein of gender ideology, pledging no more Mr. Nice Guy. In an interview with Sterigum, Cooper expressed his opposition to telling children they can change genders, citing the confusion and that it causes, and asserting that such notions are absurd and detrimental. Cooper, a professed Christian, a lot of people don't know that, argued that waiting until adulthood before making life-changing decisions to gender identity is essential. I agree. Not to be ground under his own wheels, Cooper said, "I find it wrong when you've got a 6-year-old kid who has no idea. He just wants to play, and you're confusing him, telling him, yeah, you're a boy, but you could be a girl if you want to be." I think that that's so confusing to a kid. It's even confusing to a teenager. You're still trying to find your identity, and yet here's this thing going on saying, yeah, you can be anything you want. You can be a cat if you want to be. I mean, if you identify as a tree, and I'm going, hey, come on, what are we, in a Kurt Vonnegut novel? It's so absurd that it's gone now to the point of absurdity. Interesting choice of words. Following his remarks, Vampire Cosmetics announced the termination of their makeup collaboration with Cooper, expressing their commitment to the, here we go, LGBTQIA plus community and their healthcare access. And as Alice might say, welcome to my nightmare.
Welcome to the collective nightmare, as a matter of fact. Okay, so the number 3 story, there's a heated dispute between parents and the school district in Montgomery County, Maryland, over a new educational policy allowing the use of storybooks about sexuality and identity in classrooms, starting with pre-kindergarten. Parents from various religious backgrounds opposed a judge's ruling that upheld the school district's policy, which removed parental notice and opt-out options. They used to have them. They don't anymore. These parents have been rallying in Greenbelt, Maryland, under the slogan, "Let Parents Parent," and chanting, "We will not stop," expressing their concerns over the school district's curriculum. At root of the issue is a conflict between parents' religious beliefs and the school district's commitment to providing an inclusive curriculum that covers sensitive topics such as gender transitioning and pronoun preferences for students from pre-K to 5th grade. Parents believe this approach infringes on their rights to raise children following their faith. The dispute escalated when the U.S. District Court dismissed parents' requests to opt out of classes featuring controversial books, stating that they lack proof for the alleged impermissible indoctrination. And that's what it was that they said. One of the parent groups, led by a Muslim, by the way, got to point that out, Family Rights for Religious Freedom, is appealing for a federal appeals court intervention to reinstate parental preferences And it looks like this one's going to the big guys at the Supreme Court.
Okay, well, the number 2 story is that Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, you might remember, is concerned about Anheuser-Busch's marketing campaign featuring transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. The U.S. Senate Commerce Committee is investigating whether the campaign violated guidelines that prohibit marketing alcohol to underage individuals. Now, Mulvaney's TikTok series, Days of Girlhood, that's what he calls it, was cited as a potential attempt to attract a younger audience. Senator Marsha Blackburn and Ted Cruz called on the Beer Institute. I didn't know there was such a thing. The Beer Institute to investigate Anheuser-Busch's failure to provide requested documents and its perceived disregard for congressional oversight. The controversy around Mulvaney as their ad spokesman has resulted in significant losses for Anheuser-Busch, with Bud Light sales plummeting and an estimated $5 billion reduction in market value, according to due to conservative boycotts. So,
well, you know how the meme went with this when all this went down, right?
I don't know if I remember the meme or not.
Well, there was a meme. It was a funny one. Fake woman for fake beer.
Oh yeah. Now you mentioned that. I remember that now. Yeah.
And there's a reason. We'll talk about it. You know, you can even tell your story about Dylan Mulvaney here in just a minute. But the number 1 story, and this just happened, Tropical Storm Idalia, it's been called Idalia and Idalia, has reached the Carolinas and is moving towards the Atlantic Ocean. And probably as you hear this, it's already out into the Atlantic Ocean. The storm left a trail of flooding and destruction throughout the southeast, causing power outages for almost 500,000. Actually, it's been updated. Almost 750,000 at this point. Customers due to down power lines. Rescue and repair efforts are ongoing as authorities assess the damage caused by the storm. Idalia made landfall near Keaton Beach in Florida's remote Big Bend, and caused significant damage, transforming streets into rivers and wreaking havoc in homes and infrastructure, while the storm impacted urban areas, relatively mildly rural areas like Big Bend were the hardest hit. The combination of Idalia's force and king tides in South Carolina caused seawater to surge and flood beachfront streets. In addition, the storm surge breached the seawall in Charleston. According to preliminary data, the tide reached an historic reading of over 9.2 feet in Charleston Harbor. President Joe Biden extended his administration's support for affected areas, underlining the collective determination to overcome the storm of the aftermath of Idalia's rampage. And that is this week's Christian News Roll. Now, people were constantly asking me all day yesterday, and saying, so what do you think? Is it coming here? So no, we're in Brevard County, and I went in after work. I worked all night, and Wednesday morning I went into just normal for me to get some groceries at Walmart, and there's no water, there's no toilet paper, most of the bread is missing.
A lot of Floridians take it very seriously when they hear about, and they should, but it's worth also checking out where the models are saying it's going. If it's not going anywhere near your area, you're right. Don't just get into a panic. What I think is, if there's a good thing, I was going to bring this up, is that the only good thing I can think of is that as of this point, there's been no recorded loss of life due to this storm.
That's something that
there's at least a plus.
I was afraid to
always
actually
say that about hurricanes.
Yeah, I was afraid to just say that in the story, because it's always possible that just because I couldn't find reference to it, doesn't mean that it didn't happen. But so far, the reports are that everybody's come out without perishing, so that's good. It's funny because people think about hurricanes as hitting a state, but this one hit several.
Oh yeah,
I mean, so yeah. It was actually kind of, it was wow. It's like,
You know,
okay.
people, but I just want to throw this in, is that people outside of, well, a certain geographic area don't know the name Jim Cantori, right?
Yeah.
But Floridians do. And so
Yeah.
I saw this thing, and I reposted it on my own Facebook. It's a picture of Jim Cantori. For those who don't know, he's a very prominent weather guy. He usually follows and tracks storms. And, it's always the running gag is that if Jim Cantori shows up, you got something to worry about because they're expecting the storm. So anyway, so it's a picture of him. He's just smiling. It says, "Welcome, new Floridians. My name is Jim. I will be your tour guide during initiation week." It's just like, accurate. That is accurate.
It's not wrong. Okay, so now tell your story about Dylan Mulvaney.
Oh, okay. Honestly, I mean, I'd heard about it. I've heard about the backlash and the protests about, which made Bud Light sales, crater and things like that. But it's just like, I don't know who Dylan Mulvaney is. I mean, I get that somehow transgender is figuring into this, but I don't know the person. So finally I broke down because it was in the news roll. I thought I should at least know what this is about. So I Google searched on him and, brought up pictures and whew, oh, I'm telling you, okay, to do this story justice, I gotta say something. Now, my mother's passed. She passed at 88 years old, I guess, almost 89, and but I remember this would have been obviously some time ago, the mid 80s decade, and I don't forget how it came up, whether a picture of was in the magazine, or I don't remember how the conversation between her and I came up, but she had never seen before a picture of Boy George. Remember him?
Right.
Back in the day.
Right.
And she kind of looked at him because Mom's a kind of old-fashioned lady, and looks at him. She goes, "Well, I think he's prettier as a girl." Okay. Now, whether that's true or not, I gotta say, I gotta break it to Dylan the hard way, I guess. Dude, you're not even pretty as I mean, take away the makeup, you're wearing tons of makeup, but take away all the makeup and you're not pretty as a girl. You're not, I don't know what you're going for, but dude, it ain't working for you at all, in my opinion. So now you brought up something that I had never thought of before, and I think it's well worth you bringing up now.
Which is?
The trolling.
Oh, yeah. See, here's the thing is, like, if you actually, like, you just Googled him to find out who he was.
Yeah.
When I first found out who he was, I wanted to see, okay, so he's an influencer. He's a trans influencer.
Right.
So, okay, so let me go look. So, he's got this Days of Girlhood thing. And what it is he does a video every day. And he basically says, this is day 45. This is day 395 of being a girl. And so the one that I looked at and said, I'm going to go out and touch grass. I'm going out into the forest and I'm just going to have a great time. So what happens is, and I did this for you. I said, do you remember the movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? Kate Capshaw's character stumbling around in the jungle in her pumps and like screaming. And that's what it turns into. Most of his videos play off of, some misogynistic trope about women. Right. There's a driving video and there's all these other things. And it's like, so I began to realize this guy's a troll. He's what he's doing is he's playing at this and he's seeing how many people he can rope in to believing that he really is trans.
That may be it. I mean, know.
He hasn't had any surgeries or any of that stuff. He just dresses as he's, all sorts of people have done this. And, he's doing an Andy Kaufman on people is what he's doing. He's just playing it as long as he can. I mean, and if you make money and people like constantly tell you how wonderful you are, but Here's what I didn't tell you when we were doing our prep.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is he's wait a minute. Dylan Mulvaney is a lesbian. Did you know that?
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Lesbian, right? Attracted to girls.
A transgender woman attracted to girls. How convenient.
Yeah, that's convenient. You're not kidding.
Because I guess old bro Dylan was striking out with the ladies.
Well, that could be. I mean, it could be the same thing as like going into some women's sport. You know, it's like I'll be a lesbian.
Okay, now I can imagine somebody thinking, yeah, but this actually is a serious topic, and it kind of is, as long as you're realizing that the topic can be serious and the discussions about it can be serious without necessarily taking this troll seriously. I didn't make the connection before that. Well, because I was just discovering who the person is, that, well, really everybody's being trolled with his whole persona.
That's my opinion. Okay. So anyone goes, oh, he knows. No, he doesn't. No, it's my opinion that's the case, right. But it's not just my opinion. There are lots of people that have this opinion,
Interesting.
So here's what you could say about all of this. Welcome to my nightmare.
Oh yeah. So for those of you who are definitely under 40, you don't remember all these song titles that came in. Welcome to my nightmare. The one that we led off with, the Only Women Bleed, of course. Yeah. There's other ones that they're sprinkled in.
I put that in there because this whole thing's about trans ideology, and there's all this thing about, what is a woman or whatever.
Right.
And well, I mean, it's not actually, the song is not actually about that, but the song title's apropos. I mean, Only Women Bleed. I know that's awful. You're on a Christian podcast and radio show talking about but the thing is here's the thing that's doubly absurd. If you went back to the 70s,
yeah,
Alice Cooper is on every Christian's hit list. Is like, this guy is like the and today I'm scrolling through Christian news and yep, here's Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
He's a hero of the Christian faith. Back
when he was, like a version of the devil incarnate. And so it took me a second to figure out, well, okay, so why would this cosmetics company want to have this be the spokesperson? And then it dawned on me, of course, because when he would perform, especially 70s and into the 80s, and I don't know when, if it ever changed, but he always had the makeup. The makeup was a big part of the performance. He'd have the songs and the music he'd written and, the guitars and, but he also had, kind of the white face with the black around the eyes, and then the
curl down, yeah,
the black like he was crying or bleeding black blood, from his eyes,
right?
And and I don't remember what he was doing with his lips, but yeah, okay, so I get it, makeup, and the makeup is involving things that are well, the title of the cosmetic, or the name of the cosmetics company, suggests that it's a actual for what you said was the goth crowd,
right? And whenever I looked it up, it turns out that it's a novelty company. I mean, they have one of their products looks like a wine bottle, and it's lipstick, and it's called Fangria.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I wonder if the listeners know about Fangria or.
Well, they do now.
They do now.
Yeah. So I put all those. I mean, you didn't go all the way, but I threw all those song title references in because he didn't actually say any of those. He didn't say we need to not feed the Frankenstein of gender ideology. That's just me having fun. But I did put his long quote in there, and I did like the reference because I hadn't actually. No one else has said this yet. It's like we're living in a Kurt Vonnegut novel.
The one I liked
Anybody
the best
knows
was,
who Kurt Vonnegut is, you know why he would say that.
The one I liked best was pledging no more Mr. Nice Guy in an interview. He expressed
I'm the one
his
to put that
opinion.
in. It's not that he said that in the interview, but but
Hey, well, you know what? No more Mr. Nice Guy. Now that is one of the what I would consider one of the bigger hits the guy had. I liked a fan favorite. Let's put it that way.
right.
So
Right. I just wanted to put the ones in that fit, so
sure,
because it's another guy getting canceled and it's like so but the thing is he's the hero for Christians now. And he would
yeah,
have
yeah.
been the target of everybody who's like, running records backwards to find the
Oh
backwards
yeah,
masked
yeah. I remember
messages.
that. That was a thing once.
Listen, it says praise Satan on there. Sure does.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
okay, well, no,
Okay.
the thing is they actually had what would you call it? Investigations in Washington with that. They
I know they did.
called people to witness over all of that.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Okay, can we spend a few minutes trying to explain to people how things actually work in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod?
If you think it's something the listeners are interested in, so for those of you who are wondering, you've got churches that are clearly hierarchical, right?
Right.
There's some form of bishops they're appointing or they're moving around to different congregations, parishes, the pastors, or maybe they call them priests. But so that's one model of church, and there's obviously the kind that is more like the congregational model is what they call it, where typically Baptist churches are like this,
Right.
and what they'll do is that they will have a group that will be, I think sometimes even just call it the hiring committee. If they'll do a pastoral search. Literally, they're looking for people to submit resumes. I believe they even go these days through LinkedIn. I'm not sure about that, but it's just like, well, can we get some applicants? Okay, then we're going to have them come in for an interview, but the interview is never just answer some questions and take a drug test. It's never nothing like that. It's always preach a trial sermon. A lot of people I've heard people sarcastically compare that to a beauty contest. That's who we're going to hire to be the pastor, and there's no real oversight because the congregations are so autonomous that they get together in convention to work out some things between them all, but otherwise they're separate entities. Okay, and then you've got the Missouri Synod, which arguably is neither fish nor fowl. Okay, so we don't have bishops, but we do have ecclesial supervision. And even for those of us who have been in this a long time, it's hard to explain it. It's even hard to sometimes keep it straight in our own
Right.
minds. But the congregations are autonomous as far as they are the ones that they own their own property. Generally, they typically also are the ones who extend not a job offer, but a call, because a call is seen as something that reflects this is God's will for our congregation at this time, for this person to be our shepherd. And so they're going to call. And so why do you need the hierarchy? Why do you need people in supervisory and administrative roles at all? Because as a synod, which is a word that comes from root words meaning we're walking together. Basically, the idea is that we're on the same road. We're sort of autonomous congregations who have chosen to go together down a particular road. And so, well, that's helpful. And well, then you can have people who are able to assist congregations in filling vacancies when that happens, or working through difficult issues when that that never happens in the Missouri Synod, or and also sort of charting what they like to think of themselves as charting a way forward by discussion and thinking these things through theologically on difficult topics, maybe which an individual congregation wouldn't necessarily have the resources to do. So So, but all the congregations together can pool their resources, and they can do more mission work and other kinds of things. And so that's what we're doing here. So anyway, this pastor emeritus, so the district, the northern district of Illinois, yeah, the congregation is in their district, but they really don't have the hierarchical authority like a bishop would to come in and tell the congregation, this is what you're going to do. Here's, it would have to be a very extreme situation for the district to be able to do that. And I'm not sure that this would meet the bar as far as when does things become so
it's up to
hard to deal with that district really needs to step in and I won't say tell them what they have to do, but do more than just gentle guiding. Sometimes you have to really give some pressure, good district presidents know how to do that. So,
it's kind of funny because they, in the article and I just copied what they said in the article, says they're actively searching for a permanent pastor. Well, as long as they have an interim pastor, that is what they're doing, and that's what you do anytime that there's a vacancy, because otherwise it's just an empty spot, and you can have someone lay preach, but you can't. There's a whole bunch of things that pastors do that they cannot do.
Yeah, we don't want to have lay people celebrating the Eucharist for one thing.
And district doesn't, one of the jobs that district doesn't have is deciding, who is actually going to be called to that church. So it's all, they should be talking to the congregation about who gets barred and who doesn't. Okay. Well, with all of that in mind, what are we going to talk about on the other side of the break?
Well, in a lot of ways, our discussion about the pastor and the relationship with congregations brings up a broader issue about Christian vocation, and how, when I'm going to use that word frequently, but sometimes here's what it's popularly thought of is, well, I just want to find out what God's calling me to do. This could be a lay person, this could be anybody just saying, what is God calling me to do? I want to find God's will, and if I can just uncover God's will for my life, then that's my calling, and that's what I'm going to pursue. And well, there's a way in which there's some truth to that, but we're not. There's a way that people make it. I'll tell you what it is. They make it harder than it needs to be, and they make it more confusing than it needs to be. That's for sure.
So we're going to make it unconfused.
We're going to try
to anyway.
We're going to try. Okay, it's easier to make that unconfused than to explain how synod works.
Right. So with that, stick with us, and we'll be back with more Radical Grace Radio in just a moment.